So we'll just go through briefly through the surgical management in chemical burns. Both Devyani and Ramya have done a good job as far as the introduction part and the medical management is concerned. No financial interest. So like Devyani mentioned, you need to address the eyes and ears in an acute chemical injury, and the outcome of how you manage an acute injury actually results in a better outcome in a chronic phase. So if you have ischemia, you need to address that. If you have an epithelial defect, you need to have address that. The inciting agent needs to be addressed specifically. Exposure needs to be addressed specifically. So if you look at this algorithm, it kind of gives you an idea how you would want to go about it. Yes, you have a chemical injury. You need to assess and classify it based on whatever classification you have at this point of time. DUAS is still the best, even though it has its lacunae. You will start irrigation like Dr. Ramya mentioned. So then you're looking at the epithelial defect part. I'll come to the next slide. So if there is ischemia, you're looking at whether it is localized or it is generalized. If it is localized, you would probably observe. If it is generalized, you would want to add on certain surgical measures like tenonplasty. For exposure, if it is mild, moderate, you might just want to do a tarsorrhaphy. If it is severe exposure, you might have to do a cut down, a sharp cut down, or a skin graft. Intraocular pressure, if it is low, needs to be put on systemic steroids. If it is high, needs to be managed medically with anti-glaucoma medication. As far as the epithelial defect is concerned, basically you need to know whether there's just the corneal epithelium which is damaged, or it's also the conjunctival epithelium, because you need some epithelium on the ocular surface. At the end of it, whether it is conjunctival epithelium or corneal epithelium, if there is a source of epithelium which covers the ocular surface, your cornea will not melt under it. So if you have a small corneal epithelial defect, a bandage lens would work. If you have a larger defect, or if the defect doesn't heal by 10 days, because by the 10th or the 11th day, the steroids can cause stromal melting. So you would, if by 10 days of chemical injury, you still have a defect on the surface, then you have to actually go ahead and do an amniotic membrane transplant. If you have both a corneal and a conjunctival defect, it depends on whether you have purely a bulbar defect or you have a combination of bulbar and tarsal. If it is bulbar, again, it depends on whether it is less than 50% or if it is more than 50% involved. If it is less than 50% involved, you might just go ahead with an amniotic membrane to the ocular surface. And if that fails, or if repeated amniotic fails, you might want to consider some other surgical measures. But if it is more than 50% of bulbar involvement, or it is bulbar and tarsal involvement, you might have to put a source of epithelium there, because that basically means your corneal epithelium is not there, your conjunctival epithelium is not there. So if there's no source of epithelium, it will take longer for the ocular surface to epithelialize, and that would mean that you will end up with a corneal perforation or a melt or a scarring, which you want to avoid. So in those cases, we've tried using Alloslet. You can also use oral mucosa as a substrate or a cultivated mucosal sheet in the acute phase if there's a large conjunctival defect also. And in case you end up with stromal melt and scarring, you would want to use tissue adhesives, EMT or LK as a case-to-case basis. We'll come to the cases later. So this is a video which is similar to what Devyani also showed and Ramya also showed with respect to the lime particle. So for a child, you need to take the patient up under anesthesia, and it might be stuck up in the fornices, which you need to be able to remove. Again, the lime can actually precipitate into the sclera and into the cornea. And if these are lime plaques which are there in the acute phase, you need to remove it. In the chronic phase, sometimes you might see occasional lime plaques sitting, but the eye is quiet because it has got converted to calcium carbonate. In that situation, you don't have to go in and dig and remove the plaque. But in the acute stage with inflammation, it is still releasing the components and making the surface alkaline. You need to remove the bits. And this patient, once we removed the lime bit, settled significantly well. Again, if it's a large defect like the one on the left, a small defect like the one on the left, a bandage lens will work. But if it's a large defect, then you would probably look at amniotic or Alloslet in severe cases. And we did publish our first results with Alloslet in early management of acute severe grade 4 or worse DUAS classification injuries with good outcomes. We then subsequently looked at comparing our previous results of using amniotic alone when we are using amniotic alone for these grade of injuries versus when we started using Alloslet. And we found that there's a faster epithelialization of the ocular surface when you're doing an Alloslet. There's a lesser need for subsequent surgeries. There is a lesser need for subsequent LKs or PKs in this group. There's also a lesser formation of symblepharon in these groups. And that ultimately results in a faster visual rehabilitation, which is important, especially in pediatric patients. So this is a patient who had a lime plaque, who had a total corneal and conjunctival epithelial defect. We went ahead, removed the lime plaque, put a patch of corneal tissue to address the staphyloma there, and combined it with an Alloslet. Gradually, the Alloslet failed, which is okay, but because by 6 months, we can always do an auto slit, and he's maintained 6/9 vision in his eye for the last 6 years. Another patient who already had 2 amniotics done elsewhere presented 1 month post chemical injury with a completely deepithelized surface with these large granulomas sitting. We excised the granuloma, did an Alloslet, the surface epithelized in 2 weeks' time, and then subsequently we did an auto slit. This is another child where there is a bilateral injury at 1 month post chemical injury with an amniotic also. There is a delayed epithelium on the surface. And if you leave it like this, this is going to end up with a melt or a perforation. So we released it, did an alloslet in both the eyes. The surface epithelialized. Yes, it's not as transparent as what you would like, but at least it is giving the child mobility sufficient enough for the child to move around by herself. Again, when you're looking at an epithelial defect, an eye which looks like this, which is grade 6 DUAS, where there's a conjunctival and tarsal defect, and an eye which is looking like this, which also has a defect, is still not the same, because this doesn't have ischemia, whereas the eye on the right, where it is looking white, has significant scleral ischemia. And the prognosis of both these are not going to be the same, because if you have ischemia, you need to address the ischemia with tenonplasty. If it's a localized ischemia, you can just observe it. But if it is a generalized ischemia, you would need tenonplasty surgery. Tenonplasty was first described by Rime, and we now use it regularly when there is severe. So this video shows up how you do a tenonplasty. When you're cutting it, you can see that there's no blood which is coming, indicating the lack of vascularity. And you dissect and remove the tissues from the periphery, get it towards the limbus, secure it at the limbus, and then you drape the amniotic on the ocular surface. Here, since the tarsal surface was also deepithelized, we draped it on the lid. So we used the conformer to place the amniotic on the surface so that the rest of the amniotic kind of falls over the lids, and then you secured it to the lid. And to get a source of epithelium, we followed it with an alloslet. And this one eye became hypotonic and we lost it because of the severity of the injury. This was the other eye which we were able to salvage. And this patient actually regained about 6/18 vision for about a year, and then there was a gradual failure of the alloslet, in which case we redid a top-up alloslet. And this pannus peels off pretty easily without a major issue. And you can easily peel off the tissue, access it, and we did a modified slet where we stuck additional allogenic tissue only at that quadrant which was conjunctivalized as such. And he's maintaining 6/18 vision. This has been almost now 3 years post-op. Exposure is again something that needs to be addressed. If you have a very bad exposure, it can lead to perforation, and this lady needed multiple surgeries after that to get her to have reasonable vision. And if this has significant eschar, then the eschar needs to be cut down, or you need to have tarsorrhaphy to make sure that the ocular surface is closed. Tectonic procedures in the acute stage, if you have in addition a perforation, this needs to be addressed. Now this patient had a perforation, the peripheral sclera is also ischemic, so you can't suture it. The cornea around is not very healthy for us to suture a patch graft. So we actually did a large lamellar patch graft along with a tenonplasty and an amniotic in the acute phase. That LK failed and we subsequently melted, and we subsequently had to do a PK, but at least we were able to salvage the globe, and subsequently the patient underwent a keratoprosthesis in that eye. Again, this patient also presented with a perforation along with the lid stuck to the globe. We did a PK along with the cultivated oral mucosal epithelial transplant to form the fornices. He retained he got back about 6/60 vision for a reasonable period of time, but then the comet failed. Subsequently, we did a keratolimbal allograft. Even that failed, and then we had to do a keratoprosthesis. But he's been maintaining 6/24 vision in that eye for the last 6 years. A patient who had a perforation like this with a chemical injury, we knew this patient might ultimately need keratoprosthesis, so we went ahead, excised the lens and did a large lamellar graft to act as a tectonic support to the globe, and covered the eye with the conjunctival hooding. Subsequently, the patient underwent a mucous membrane grafting to the ocular surface, and ultimately underwent a type 2 keratoprosthesis under the mucosa to get back about 6/24 vision in her only eye. Another patient in the acute stage who presents with a lid stuck to the globe with an area of impending perforation. We had to surgically take the patient up to excise the symblepharon and then tectonically salvage the globe. So you did a large LK. Since there's an area of perforation, we decided to put a small patch of tissue, stuck that with glue, and then put a large corneoscleral graft on top of it to act as a source of limbus as well as tectonic support to the eye per se. Again, when you're dealing with these eyes in the chronic phase and you have to plan for a stem cell transplant, you need to know what is the thickness of the cornea under the scar. So if you have an OCT, get an OCT done to measure the corneal thickness, and get an OCT done to measure the pannus thickness. Because if the underlying cornea is thin, you might actually have to combine a large corneoscleral graft, which will take care of the limbus also. Subsequently, you can always do an autoslet in about a month or 2 months or 3 months whenever the allogenic limbus starts failing. So this patient had a unilateral injury who presented with, who had an amniotic in the acute phase, but you can see how severely the ocular surface is affected. Wanted better cosmesis. We went ahead, released the symblepharon, did a alloslet. The surface was better formed. Patient was keen on vision, so we did an autoslet. The clarity improved further, and then we did an LK. for the patient. So when you're doing an LK in a post-SLED eye, you might want to preserve whatever SLED bits or the area of the limbus that you did. So we did a limbal sparing thing where we're dissecting the tissue and reflecting the limbal tissue back and doing a large corneoscleral graft and then sticking the limbal tissue back onto the donor cornea as such. Again, another child who had a severe chemical injury with ankyloblepharon, multiple surgical reconstructions, ex vivo allosled followed by DALC, maintaining some amount of vision in that eye. Another patient similarly who had a partial success with an ex vivo limbal stem cell transplant, then underwent a large corneoscleral graft along with conjunctival limbal autograft of 3 clock hours. He maintained useful vision for about 4 years, and then he developed a failed LK because of a stromal rejection. So if the LK fails because of a stromal rejection, it's not too bad because you can again go ahead and redo the LK. It peels off in that area pretty easily. And once you can now see that the area which is vascularized is the interface, the previous interface. You can go deeper, and the deeper interface is much clearer now. And you can actually, as we're closer to the DM, you can actually peel off the tissue much more easily. So doing a repeat LK is not difficult. You will get the plane pretty easily, but you might have to go deeper than that initial plane to get rid of the vascularization. Again, a patient who had a severe chemical burn, one eye only was salvageable, had underwent a keratolimbal allograft that failed, subsequently underwent a Boston keratoprosthesis. He had issues with the Boston keratoprosthesis where there was a melt of the donor cornea. So he had to have an LK. Again, that melted. So we had to do an LK again and then did a conjunctival hooding since a bandage lens was not being kept in place, and he developed a little bit of a conjunctival overgrowth on top of the optic, which we keep removing every 4 months by snipping off the conjunctiva. A patient with a severe chemical injury with an RD underwent a type 2 keratoprosthesis with a VR surgery, and it's now about 7 years. He's maintaining 6/18 vision in his only eye. Another patient with one eye chemical injury, other eye was already damaged because of the chemical injury. There's a tarsography done by the primary surgeon. So when we opened up, there was a large staphyloma. So we addressed the staphyloma with a patch graft, then planned for a type 2 keratoprosthesis with AGV and vitrectomy, and he has maintained 6/6 vision for the last 4 years. Another patient who presented in the acute phase with a perforation and a melt of the cornea, underwent a PK, underwent a VR surgery because she also had an RD. We tried to do an ocular surface reconstruction with allogenic cells that failed. Subsequently, we draped the ocular surface with a mucosa and then did a type 2 keratoprosthesis under the mucosa. Just a couple more slides. So this patient presented with a bilateral injury where there was probably inconsistent PL, but the patient was very keen. So we went ahead, draped a mucosa on the ocular surface and subsequently did a type 2 Boston keratoprosthesis under the mucosa, and she got back 3/60 vision. Another patient who underwent an OKP after an acute chemical injury, which was a case of vitriolage in this case. And this is the most challenging case that we had so far: severe ocular surface and facial deformities with an RD, underwent PK-VR surgery first, subsequently underwent a modified orokeratoprosthesis under the conjunctiva. And this is how she was at presentation, and this is how she is now, maintaining 6/60 vision, and she's teaching in a government school as such. So when you look at a unilateral limbal stem cell deficiency, you basically look at whether the surface is dry or keratinized. If it is keratinized, you're basically only looking at cosmetic indications. If it is moist, you look at whether the fornix is formed or fornix is not formed. If the fornix is formed, then you're going to look at whether the underlying the pannus, the cornea is thin or it is normal thickness. If the cornea is normal, then you're looking whether the cornea is clear or it is scarred. If it is clear, you can just do an autogenic slit. If it is scarred, you might have to combine the autogenic slit at some point with an LK or a PK. If it is thinned out, you will have to see whether the thinning is in the center or it is more diffuse. If it is in the center, you might have to combine an LK or a PK with an auto slit. And if it is diffuse, you might have to combine it with a large slit, either at the same sitting or subsequently. So you use this kind of an algorithm even for a bilateral, so where you're looking at always to say whether it's keratinized or it is moist. If it is moist, whether the fornix is formed or fornix is shallow. And in this case, because there is no source of limbus, you need to know whether the patient is going to be eligible for immunosuppression or not. If he is going to be eligible for immunosuppression, then you can do stem cell transplants. If he is not eligible for immunosuppression, you're probably going to go ahead with the keratoprosthesis. And if he's eligible for immunosuppression, then you plan just like how you do for a unilateral injury. Only thing, the source of limbus here is going to be either an allogenic cell or a live related cell or a keratolimbal allograft or a cultivated mucosal sheet as such. And when it is bilateral, surface is keratinized or dry, or surface reconstruction procedures have failed, then you're looking at keratoprosthesis. Again, if your fornix is reasonably formed, you might be able to do a type 1 keratoprosthesis. But if your fornix is not very well formed, you might have to come to do a type 2 keratoprosthesis like an OKP or a Boston type 2, or some of the modifications like a type 2 Boston keratoprosthesis under a mucosa as such. And we've explained that very well in our publication on surgical management of limbal stem cell deficiency, which is freely available on the net. So to conclude, desperate times need desperate measures. You might need to think outside the box in certain situations. Acute phase management significantly impacts the chronic phase outcome. And in a bilaterally blind patient, every effort needs to be made to preserve whatever little bit of vision that we can give to the patient. Acknowledge our patients and my colleague at SN. Thank you. Sorry.